All right, I wasn't planning to do a reading on Will Smith, but
Uh-oh.
I mean, it seems like the moment has passed. It happened, the famous slap happened months ago.
Yeah.
It seemed like maybe we'd moved on, and what's the point now? But I recently watched the fascinating interview that David Letterman did with Will Smith before the Oscars. And it's fascinating because if you haven't seen it, there's parts where Will Smith shows David Letterman how to box a little, and he also talks about his ayahuasca experiences and how in one of his trips he saw his career falling away from him. So it seems like it almost ties into this like psychic experience. I've talked about ayahuasca use before, my own use of it, and how it does seem to tie in with this general psychic awareness. And when I talk about psychic powers, I think a lot of people think of it something as, you know, special or out there that doesn't affect everyone. But the truth is that we're all becoming more psychic. If you think about animals before they're able to communicate with words, before humans were able to communicate with words, we could only share so much of our felt inner experience. But as we developed language, we could suddenly, with a few speech sounds, transmit ideas and information into other people's heads. And now with our growing multimedia environment that's been growing, especially in the 20th century, it really ballooned, but now in the 21st century with all these different new forms that are happening, they are not too dissimilar from drugs. I think of drugs as a form of media and media as a form of drugs, and they're all about, you know, connecting our minds to this universal substrate in which we're all connected. So Will Smith, I think he said he's done ayahuasca like 14 times or something, 16 or 4, some number in the teens, a good amount of times. And one of those experiences, he saw not just his career tumbling away, but also something happening to his daughter Willow. So there are several issues that I wanted to address in this tarot reading. So let's take a look. What's going on with Will Smith, and what does his future look like? Now, striking somebody on stage, that could be a career-ending move, or it could not. A lot of people think he has a lot of fans, and a lot of people think he was justified in doing what he did. I'm not here to judge that. I'm just saying I want to know, does he have a career or not? So first, I looked in 2022, just 2022. Will he be making any kind of a career move, like putting himself in the limelight again in some way, shape, or form? And for that, the card that came up was the Two of Wands. The Two of Wands is a card about reassessing your position, taking a look at what your possibilities are and your paths are for the future. So it's not a very action-oriented card. So I would say for this, you know, he's reconsidering what he can do. He still wants to be in Hollywood and act. But from this, I'm seeing that there's not a lot of action taking place. I think he's just calculating his moves and thinking about how he's going to be perceived by the public and what he can do to rehabilitate his image. The Two of Wands is not a very active card. I wanted to look beyond that though, at his longer term. I looked basically at the next 5 years. I wanted to see what are his plans and attempts to make a comeback. For this, the card that came up was the Six of Cups, and the Six of Cups is a very innocent, kind of naive, youthful attempt at to work with others. You can see it's very childlike, the imagery, and there's a sense of nostalgia about it, a sense of getting back to your roots and finding things. I think this is basically Will Smith trying to woo Hollywood and woo the public again, to see that he has made amends and that he's trying to change, and that wasn't really who he was. It's sort of like you know, seeing yourself as a child and that you deserve forgiveness, but he's not a child, obviously, and trying to approach the public like this and Hollywood like this may be a mistake, but it is what he thinks. He thinks that Hollywood and the public still loves him and that still wants to work with him again. Whether that will be the case, this is the attitude that he's coming to that with, that this is like this naivety there's a sense of naivety, but it's also just a desire to kind of go back to your roots and see things a little more simplistically. So I wanted to look next at what is Hollywood, and I say Hollywood like it's one person or something, which it obviously is not, but they, in general, Hollywood will work with you if they think they can make money. And I wanted to know though, like, what is the likelihood that Hollywood studios will work with him? I think there are still a lot of directors and actors in Hollywood that would want to work with Will Smith and give him another chance. So, but overall, I want to see the general energy that I'm feeling from Hollywood. And for that, I'm seeing Judgment. And Judgment is a card about, it can be about judging, judging people, but it's also about kind of like the last judgment in which, the old rules and the old orders are overturned. I think, a lot of people are going to be turning their back on Will Smith from this incident based on this. This is a judgment of a new set of rules and new situations in which, Will Smith in the past may have gotten $10 million for every movie, but that situation may be gone from his life. I don't think this is the new media landscape is such that nobody ever goes away if they don't want to. There's so many opportunities and ways. I mean, he could just directly work through TikTok and Instagram and YouTube if he wants, but if he wants to. But I think that he'd like to go back to, the working with Hollywood again. It's just a matter of whether that will happen. And with a Judgment card, it's very difficult. It seems like a lot of avenues and opportunities have been closed to him. Next, in that Letterman interview, he talked about in his ayahuasca trip seeing something like Willow Smith being in danger somehow. So I wanted to know, is there a threat to her life and her livelihood in the next 5 years? For this, the card that came up was the Ten of Swords, and this does not look like a good card. This is, a very disastrous card. Now, before I say she's doomed, I never say that, because I don't think that the tarot locks you into negative or positive outcomes. Like, you still have to do the work and show up. And, it's really about giving you a set of circumstances and then what'll happen unless you take action. So you can always redeem yourself and start acting to make a new story and a new future. And I think the thing about what he saw in his ayahuasca trip with his career leaving him, it wasn't like that happened to him in a way that was out of his control. He was the one that did that. So is the Willow Smith danger threat, is that something similar? I think that it's sort of a step like that we see, his career has been very seriously damaged from the slap at the Oscars, but it has forced him to reassess his life and his opportunities and his role in, what happens to him. So I think this Willow Smith situation is something that it's not completely out of his control. It's something that he's going to have to work with and his fate. But at present, and if he doesn't make some major changes in his life and his way of dealing with the world, that she is in very serious danger. Finally, I wanted to look at one thing that's been talked about even before the Oscars, the rumors that have circulated for years that Jada and Will Smith were on the verge of divorce, whether the divorce might be happening. So I took a look at that, and the card that I see is the Eight of Wands. And unlike these other cards, this is the card that I usually refer to as up in the air, because it's a situation in which there's just way too many outcomes at play, and there's no decisive factor one way or the other at this point. I think a lot of it, like the Will Smith situation, is going to come down to Will's behavior and actions when he does start to speak again, which I think it will happen at some point this year. That's all I have to say about this situation for now. If you have more things you'd like to know about this or any other situation in the news, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll do my best to get to it. And if you'd like to contact me directly for tarot readings or life coachings, you can do so here, and I will see you in future videos. Bye.